Hello and welcome to episode 160 Building Thought Leadership and Content. Today we have an awesome guest, Julie Relevant. She is the owner and I guess founder and owner of Relevant Writing LLC, a company that provides copywriting and content writing services for B2B healthcare brands. We've talked about thought leadership here on the show before, so she's going to dive deeper into it. Thank you, Julie, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. So thought leadership is something that has been building. I mean, it's existed forever, but building over the last, I say 5 years, especially in the startup space. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you do as a business before we get into like our deeper question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a background as a journalist, writing for Fox News for nearly 6 years and other outlets like Everyday Health and First for Women magazine and several outlets over the past 20 plus years. But for the past 10 years, I focused on B2B healthcare copywriting and content writing. And a lot of that does include thought leadership articles that companies or their PR agencies will then pitch and place in media outlets, as well as many other types of thought leadership pieces, such as ebooks and white papers, and then anything really that you would need. So, sell sheets and brochures and email campaigns, just all of it.
Awesome. So, I mean, one of the hardest things about thought leadership is everyone thinks they can do it. And so they feel like it's like a kind of like a silver bullet to their PR program. And it's funny because I hear clients tell me all the time, oh yeah, they're all looking for coverage or they're all looking for content. Sure, people are looking for content, but they are not going to publish trash. So,
Exactly.
so I think that's kind of one of the things that I wanted you to kind of cover and discuss was what exactly are these outlets looking for
Mhm.
and how can we provide value as contributors, I guess, from a PR or startup aspect? How can we provide more value to actually get our pitches heard?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. And we're seeing lately that a lot of newsrooms aren't really existed anymore. And they've got really lean teams, and journalists and editors and producers are doing more with less. And so, what they really do need is thought leadership content. And you're right in saying that everyone wants to do thought leadership and they think they know what it is. But I'm here to say that, thought leadership is not a blog post. It's not about you. It's not about your company. And that may come as a surprise to you. It's not about your solutions. What it is giving your audience a solution to an age-old problem. It's providing something that's new, even if it's not new, putting a fresh spin on it, something that's newsworthy and will make your audience think about something differently, give them that fresh perspective, solve their problem, push them in a certain way, encourage them to take action, really kind of rethink what everyone's talking about. And so, particularly in B2B healthcare where I work, everyone's talking about the same topics: health equity, social determinants of health, healthcare costs, all of it, right? And everyone has a solution. But what is it that your company is going to do to come in and say, actually, we think you should think about it this way? Or have you ever thought of this idea? So it's really coming in with new, fresh ideas, clickable ideas, and things that people haven't necessarily heard about. And also, you want your marketplace to start talking about.
Right. And I mean, I guess the question would be when you're drafting content like that or you're creating like the topic outline, let's say, how can you also the question I get is what is the ROI from that, right? So
Hmm.
like how can I know that I'm going to get brand equity from this particular article? I'm just publishing information that doesn't seem like it's going to come back to me. What does that cycle look like and how much do people need to publish to actually make that work for them? Because that's a question I get a lot.
Yeah. So I would say, first and foremost, you're not necessarily thinking about the ROI. You're thinking about this being a long game. So your goals, first, you should think about your goals, but typically your goals are building brand awareness, again, fostering thought leadership, getting the marketplace to think differently. And so it's not like a case study where you're at the end of the road and you're trying to close a deal. it's a long game, like any sort of content that you're publishing. And so I would say that best practice is, as often as you can, right? Like try to get a thought leadership article placed once a month. But it's a consistent effort, and it requires that you're also reaching out to journalists, to editors, to producers, and you're kind of staying in the marketplace, and also publishing on other channels, on your social media, on your own website, utilizing all of your channels.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge is sometimes we get companies that are doing this for the first time or expecting like an immediate reaction. They're like,
Right.
"Oh, I'm gonna publish an article and then I'm gonna get a whole bunch of leads," or something like that. It's building credibility takes time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it could take 6 months to a year, really, of kind
Yeah.
of putting your name out there and being active. But it's like any other channel, right? You're not just going to publish a blog post. I think people think that too. They're going to put an article on their site and then build it and they will come. But that's not what happens at all.
Right, right. This is not Field of Dreams. I think the other thing is that you could actually repurpose these pieces of content a lot of different ways. And is that something that you guys, that you help with? And what would you suggest when building one piece of content? What else can you do with this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that a lot of clients actually ask me to do that, surprisingly, and it
Okay.
is such a great way. You never want anything to be one and done. You're putting in
Right.
all that effort. You want to leverage it for multiple channels, multiple ways. So I would actually advise, if you're creating an ebook or a white paper, then to leverage that into several thought leadership articles. But if it's one thought leadership article, you'd have to check with the outlet, but you could likely republish it, syndicate
Mhm.
it on your own website, other channels, repurpose it into LinkedIn posts,
Right.
email campaigns, videos. And if you have your SME, you're doing an interview with a C-suite leader on video, you're done, right? You use that for the article, for social media. And also, I would say that media outlets probably would love if you have video, if your SME is media savvy.
Right. Well, I mean, also think like with AI, obviously we have this huge conversation around artificial intelligence right now and chat GPT and things like that. You could probably take your final article, which we've talked about AI in previous podcasts on how we can't really like just trust AI to produce an article. And obviously Google also understands that there's a big AI push, so it doesn't index as well with AI generated content, so you really have to have your hands on this content, but, like, maybe that is another great way to understand how many different ways you can chop it up too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, particularly in healthcare, I don't think that AI is really going to touch B2B healthcare. And it's because that information just really isn't available, right?
Right.
You're getting the real story when you're doing interviews.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point to understand because a lot of our, potential clients or people listening might think, "Oh, I can just enter a prompt into ChatGPT and I'm gonna get a great article." And it looks like sometimes you do get a good article, but I think people don't read it all the way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And for thought leadership, again, thought leadership
Yeah.
that's fresh and new and newsworthy, you're not going to get that from AI.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great point too, like, yeah, you're not gonna get thought leadership. Thought leadership has to infuse your expertise. I mean, I think that's also another area where I think some companies fail to understand is that you actually have to contribute and collaborate in these articles. So, how does that work when you're writing an article and you're getting expert insight so that you can generate something in their voice?
Well, so I mean, typically the companies that I work with, they have a marketing team, and so they're
Yeah.
coming up with the idea. Sometimes I am, but generally they come to me with an idea, and then I will develop a discussion guide and interview their SMEs and develop the content that way. But what I will say is that oftentimes that doesn't happen, and it's a huge mistake. Whether it's because the C-suite isn't on board with thought leadership, or they just can't even get the
They're
person,
busy.
yeah,
Yes.
do a half an hour interview. And it's a huge mistake, right? Because you're not getting that insight. And so then your thought leadership is a blog post.
Yes.
So I would say, try to get buy-in. Just block out a half an hour. That's all you need to write a great article.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and sometimes I do, I end up going to tell them like, "Hey, I just need 30 minutes."
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and it's hard to get them on the phone, nobody wants to get on the phone anymore, I think we all have, like, Zoom fatigue.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so it's really hard for them to understand that. Okay, so there's a few different areas that, I'd love for you to touch on, a little bit more tactical, and one of the things that you had brought up earlier when we were speaking was why most pitches landed in the trash. And I love this
Mhm.
one because I think it's really important, and I'm sure we all make these mistakes. Can you go over some of the top offenders?
Yes, yes. Yeah, so when I was at Fox News, I would say that 99% of the pitches that I received landed in the trash. And so I'd say the biggest offenders are bad subject lines. So maybe it's story idea or have a media expert for you. Great, right? Who
On
cares?
what?
Right,
On what?
exactly. Yeah. And so I would say, with your subject lines, definitely make them something that the journalist or the editor or the producer has to click. So it's a new study, it's a new stat, it's a dirty little secret. I got a pitch like that years ago when I was at Fox News. Someone pitched me, it's a dirty little secret on industry trend. And he was interviewed. So things like that are really important. I would say that so often companies are leading with the me, with the our product is amazing, our solution.
Yeah.
We have a new book out, we have a new expert. They don't really care. They need news. So yeah, I would say that that is probably definitely one of the biggest issues for sure.
I love that. Okay. Yeah, I think, we have to get some of these, people out of their own heads when it comes to because,
Yeah.
they're involved in the day to day, they're drinking their juice,
Yep.
but nobody else is drinking it yet, you know? So
Right. Yeah.
so that's all often a problem. And then, like, I think you touched a little bit on the real thought leadership and what that looks like and what kind of insights the news is looking for. I always tell people to use data when possible because
Yes.
that's like facts and figures. It's things like you can't deny, like
Hmm.
the numbers don't lie. What else do you think we can do to create real expertise, thought leadership, not just for that one article, but for like to have the reporter coming back to you again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've been on some webinars where publicists have talked about how relationships don't really matter anymore. And I found that to be really interesting because years ago, relationships really did matter. If
Right.
had a great rapport with a journalist, they were more likely to call on you. And I found that to be true as well. And
I
so I
agree,
think,
yeah.
yeah. And so I think that, again, they're looking for something that isn't covered or fresh spin on the same old story. Absolutely. Stats, new surveys. If your company has done an original research report, and that's like a gold mine for sure.
I tell
Yeah.
people that all the time, and I don't know if they just don't believe me or they don't wanna invest because sometimes, that takes a lot of money to do surveys and things like that, but, like,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Dude, like, if you have great data, we can definitely
Yes.
get coverage, like, give it to me," and then when I get the stuff, it's really, like, flat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, if there's original research, if there's just even a short study that your company has conducted or maybe partnered with another company to do, that's really newsworthy. And again, kind of like you're unearthing something that isn't being talked about or something that isn't being talked about in that way. And then I think the other part of this also is having experts who are ready when they're called.
Yes. Well,
um,
that's a huge problem. That's a huge
yeah,
problem.
yeah, and it's hard, right? Because they're all busy, but again, that I think that comes back to buy-in and your C-suite knowing why you're doing outreach, why you're trying to get thought leadership placed. It all comes back to the why. So once you have that, that's half the battle. And then, yeah, they can be making sure that they're available and also that they're media savvy. So I find that most experts, most C-suite leaders are not media trained, and again, they'll do interviews and ramble on about the solution and the product and how great their company is when really they need to be educating and
Yeah.
and really solving the audience's problems.
Right, absolutely. Okay. So we've come to the point where we've done all this. We've kind of covered your kind of best practices, and we're okay. We checked the boxes. Thought leadership is in, ready to go. How do you start generating great ideas that are a little bit out of the box and coming up with some of these like topic lines?
Yeah. So first, I think it starts with research. You want to see what your competitors are publishing. You want to see what the outlet itself is posting. So definitely look and see if you're targeting a specific journalist or producer. Look at kind of the stories that they've covered, how they talk about the story, who their target audience is, and kind of the general topics that they cover, and then see how you can then lend something different to that story. I'm sorry, can you answer the question again? Because I have something else
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
no, that's okay. Yeah, so just understanding like how do we generate topic lists
Oh, yes.
basically? A
Yeah,
list of ideas.
and so the other thing is, again, FaceTime with your C-suite leaders. So, again, they're busy, but
Little
when
brainstorm.
yeah, I mean, that's how the best ideas come from. They're not necessarily coming from marketing. They're
Yeah.
coming from that FaceTime, and it's the conversations that those leaders are kind of having behind closed doors, or they're thinking about, when they can't sleep at night. So it's definitely, I would say, the best story ideas have come for me when we're doing interviews, and then we ask about something that's related, or something just kind of organically comes up. And I will say that when you're conducting interviews, the best question that you ask is always the last one. And it's, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you feel is important? And I 9 times out of 10, that's when the story comes.
Yeah, after you get their wheels spinning, right? Like
Yeah.
you've warmed them up with some questions, and then at the end, you're like, "What did we leave out?" And then they come
The best.
pouring out with,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's good. And a tip is make sure that you're recording these conversations and transcribing them so that you have it on record because taking notes yourself manually only goes so far.
Yeah, no, no, no. I don't think anyone's doing that anymore, right?
Yeah, well, I love taking notes manually, but then I'm like, "Oh, well, then I have to also record this." And then, "Oh, maybe I should also use Firefly," or
Yeah.
whatever system that we're using at the time. Okay, so this is great. I think the other thing, we always love to talk about best practices. You've covered a lot of them here already, but just to kind of recap them in one section, what are some of your yeah, let's start with this one and then I'll go into the next question. What are some of your do's and don'ts for pitching and then also writing, not just pitching, but also writing the content?
Okay. Again, I would say know your outlet, know
Mhm.
who you're pitching to, pitch someone and not a to whom it may concern or hi. Make those subject lines really clickable and short
Okay.
when you're writing the pitch. So no one has time. People are skimming. They need to know what they need to know right away. So in your pitch, you're saying you're getting we say don't bury the lead. You're getting right to it. So did you know that X percentage of buyers do this? And your numbers are great, like you said, and you include maybe 1 to 2 sentences about it. And by the way, I have this expert ready to go. Let me know if you want to interview them. And you put a little bit of credentials. Don't put the whole bio. Don't put anything about the company necessarily. No one's reading it. They just want to know what the story is and why you're the right expert, and what you have to say that's new. So I would say definitely keep it short and sweet. So in terms of writing the content, again, it always starts with research. You want to know what the challenge is, what your unique spin on it is. Always include updated studies. So I would say within the last 5 years or so, make sure that you can back up your claims with research. That's really important. Keep your thought leadership, if it's an article, under 1,000 words, maybe 800 to 1,000 words. I think that's generally the target that most outlets are looking for. Break up sections, a lot of white space, include the quotes if you have them, or if it's a bylined article. Yeah, so I think that pretty much covers it.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit of the format of the article before we go into my next question. So, how would you outline an article, the process of writing itself? Kind of how do you approach that, attack it?
Yeah, it's so hard for me to answer because it comes as second nature.
Yeah,
I've been doing
yeah,
it
yeah,
so
yeah.
long, but I understand when you're not a writer, it's hard to kind of tackle. But I think best practice is thinking like a journalist. So your lead and it should always be the who, what, where, why, and how. So you can
Mm.
start out with that. And headline should be short and snappy and surprising and clickable. And definitely if there's data, always include that. In terms of the process, I mean, you're doing interviews, and I would say generally an article will pull out 2 to 3 main points and support those claims. And then, I think one mistake that people make sometimes is always trying to sneak in product and always trying to sneak in our solution. And it's just a big mistake. So when you're writing, you can certainly write about your solutions in a way that you're using messaging that's talking about the solution without directly talking about it.
Yeah,
So that's really important. And again, it's a long game, right? So you're not saying, here, come click, come buy. You're saying, this is how our company thinks about this industry problem. These are our unique solutions. And ultimately, the goal is that they're going to want to reach out to have a conversation with you.
right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just building that trust of like, oh, we're sharing this information with you because we want you to know it, not necessarily because you need to buy our stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the question came back to me that I had before, which was when you're pitching your article, once you have it, do you, or actually before you have it, do you typically want to pitch an abstract or you want to pitch the whole article?
It's a good question. I don't know because I'm not that side of it, but I would say that so when I've worked with companies, they want the article complete and then they'll go out and pitch it.
Well, what about the
Yeah.
media side though?
Yeah, well, so the PR firm that so I have partnered with PR firms who will pitch thought leadership, and so they're telling me that the editors want the completed piece.
Oh, okay, okay. They're
Yeah,
already at that process.
yeah,
You're not working with people who are asking for an abstract first and then an article.
yeah. No, and I would say that probably most outlets want the completed article.
Okay. Okay.
Is that what you
Uh,
find with your clients?
well, I don't know. Sometimes I see outlets or media outlets specifically are asking for like, hey, send us your idea first before you write the article,
Okay.
to get the idea approved. And
Yeah.
then I guess there's another group of media that just says submit the full article and we'll let you know in a few weeks if we publish it or not, you know? So it's like
Right.
I don't know. I don't know which is the best way to do it, and also, like, we don't wanna chase down someone who's not gonna publish a fully written article because you can really only place it one place originally, right? Like, a lot
Right.
of the media outlets want original content,
That's
and
right.
so they don't want something that's gonna be published in multiple outlets, and
Right.
so there's that conundrum of, like, trying to figure out, "Okay, do I just send this and wait for 3 weeks and let that time pass? Because nobody wants to wait, right? Nobody has time. Sometimes what I've done in the past is submit to, like, 3 publications, and then if somebody takes it, email the other 2 later and say, like, "Oh, sorry, this has already been picked up." You
Yeah.
know? But, I don't know. It's like, player's choice when it comes to that sometimes.
Well, yeah, and I think some of the outlets have their editorial guidelines on their site, so you can look at that and see what they prefer. And then
Yeah.
if you have a relationship, I mean, that's definitely relationships. Yes, I don't think they matter as much in terms of getting your content placed, but they matter in business. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
if if you do have a relationship with someone at a news outlet, then you'll get to know really kind of their preference over time.
Yeah, and I
Mm.
definitely think I think a lot of brands put a lot of importance on relationships in the PR realm, and they say, like I feel like they put too much importance on the
Mm,
relationships,
right.
and then, like you said, they matter when you have something relevant. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, if I would definitely get my pitch heard for people that I've worked with
Yeah.
a lot faster.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that with people I haven't worked with, I wouldn't get my pitch seen.
Right.
So I think that's where PR people kind of like waffle a little bit because it's like, okay, well, I can still pitch new reporters that we haven't worked with before if I'm really good at coming up with subject lines or like reeling them in. But yes, a relationship that's established can also be a lot faster to an answer, basically. It's
Absolutely.
not faster to publishing, but faster to an answer of like yes or no, this is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
They could just give you a little buy-in. So I think, yeah, you just have to, like you said, relationships do matter in business, regardless of what business you're in. So
Exactly. Yeah. And something, we didn't talk about is
yeah,
kind of think outside of traditional media and pitch podcasts because they're easy to get placement.
yeah,
And again, it's such great media to repurpose later on into your thought leadership articles or longer form pieces of content. And they're just so great for brand building. So I
yeah.
would recommend that, entrepreneurs like your audience should definitely try to pitch podcasts.
Yeah, I think repurposing content is like a big theme for me this year, and it has been for a few years of just telling people like, "Hey, don't just use this one and done concept, right? Like just use it as many times as you can." It's like a treasure trove. Like you've in any interview, like maybe even this interview, we've got like at least 2,000 words.
Right.
Like just use that think about it that way and like how many words do you have and how many different places can you put it? And we've talked about so many various topics in that same realm of content writing, but maybe 4 or 5 different topic areas. So
Exactly.
I think people need to kind of reimagine how they're approaching the content, and if people like you can help us kind of take those little bits and pieces and generate new ideas from that
Yes,
bigger
exactly.
piece. So tell us a little bit more about where people can find you, how they work with you. You did kind of do a little intro, but just to understand what kind of brands you work with and how you work with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, thank you. So you can learn more about my company, Revelance Writing, at revelantswriting.com. And I work with a wide array of sectors within B2B SaaS and health tech, med tech, so employee benefit solutions, health at home, specialty pharmacy, patient member engagement, really a wide array of sectors. And I support brands with thought leadership content and copywriting, and particularly video script copywriting as well. Yeah.
And do you do any social media content or anything like that? You did mention like email marketing before. Any other types of content? Because I mean, we work with content writers too, and it's great to have like a network of people who can write because especially in different voices, because
Yeah.
you never know if you're gonna like the voice of that person. So it's like you pick the right person for the right job. Mm.
So that's interesting that you say that because people have said that before. And I think that comes back to, and this could be another podcast
Yeah.
episode for you, but it comes back to your brand messaging and then also your brand voice and style guidelines. So oftentimes companies will run into that challenge where they're working with different freelancers and they worry that the voice is not the same. And so if you have all those elements in place, they should be the same. Everyone at the company, including external partners, should be talking about the company in the same way. So, yeah, to answer your question, I do some social media. I kind of build it more into packages for other
For
deliverables. But
larger content.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
not the main thing that I do.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I know a lot of us try to shy away from the social media, focus. I mean, we like, we're a PR firm, but we do social media content as well, but it's
Right.
really like you're pulling from different sources. And I think a lot of the time, the people that use us for social media are concerned with brand consistency and brand voice, and they want to keep that like that main theme through all their different pieces of content. And we've talked about consistency in previous podcasts and how important that is. So I agree. I think though when we're talking about entrepreneurs and founders and startups, sometimes they don't have those brand guidelines. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
the problem ends up being.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. And even years later, after you've launched a company, you're still trying to
Yeah.
discover your voice and what is our message. And I would say that even happens for well-established companies. We
Yeah.
run into that. And so it is, when you are able to put those foundational pieces in place, it's refining them over time.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. We have lots of really good golden nuggets in here. We'll have all your contact information in the show notes. Is there anything we didn't talk about that we missed?
No, I think we covered it all. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thanks, Julie, and we'll see you in the next episode.